Now you're welcome along. So there is a new Premier League season lurking around the corner at this stage, and we have not talked much football across the summer given everything going on elsewhere, and it has been a lively transfer window. So we're going to get into it now. Our football coverage, as ever, is in association with Sky Sports, where you can experience more exclusive live sport than anywhere else, including at least 215 live Premier League games from next season. There is a Ryder Cup in September, every F1 race, the finale to the Lions Tour on Saturday against Australia, and much more. You can watch Sky Sports on Sky, or you can stream it with Now. Very happy to say it's been a couple of months. Jonathan Wilson is with us. Good to chat, Jonathan. You're very welcome.
Thank you very much.
It has been a lively summer, no? More lively than recent seasons. Really interesting one.
Yeah, I think that's true. It was right at the start of the window, there was a lot of clubs got a lot of business done pretty quickly. So Arsenal bringing in Zubimendi, for instance, Chelsea bringing in Joe Pedro and Jamie Gittins and Liam Delap. And then more recently, we've had this sort of centre forward carousel with Gyökeres joining Arsenal, Ekitike joining Liverpool. Now looks probably like Isak joining Liverpool, which may then mean that Newcastle end up going for Šeško. And yeah, suddenly there's a lot of business being done, and a lot of it seems quite interesting. After 2 or 3 years where I'd say there was sort of a general policy of retrenchment, not at Chelsea, obviously, but elsewhere, there was a policy of retrenchment.
Well, let's talk Liverpool then, because they are absolutely using that PSR headroom. These signings are exciting. Like Florian Wirtz in particular is kind of a joy to watch, easy on the eye, dribbler. Ekitike is a dribbler as well, but kind of an interesting profile in that he's like long-legged and tall, and it's a bit like Bambi on ice. And then other times, he's going by people. So he's going to be interesting to watch. You've got Frimpong, who I guess is there to replace Trent Alexander-Arnold, but like a very different player. I mean, kind of marauding, dribbler as well, runner. Like on paper, these look like great signings. Wirtz in particular, there is that nagging, and it's only a small nagging sense, more of a small question than a big one. Those types of players where they're dribblers and their skill and running power, like in Frimpong in particular, there is always that question as to how that translates to the Premier League, which is bigger, faster, stronger.
Yes, I mean, I'd be surprised if that's a problem with either the fullbacks. I mean, Kirkus, obviously, we saw it working at Bournemouth last season.
Sure.
Frimpong, he looks like a player who should be. I mean, you're right, you don't know, but he looks like a player who shouldn't have any physical difficulty. Ekitike, my doubt about him is how good is he against low blocks, against defenses that sit deep against Liverpool. But actually, I suspect that I mean, there's not really such a thing as the first 11 anymore. But I suspect, particularly if Isak arrives, he wouldn't be part of that. That it's very much he's cover and he's learning, and they like his potential, because I think there is still a rawness there. They do seem to change the profile of the midfield slightly. That is assuming it's sort of a 4-2-1-3 or 4-2-3-1 with Wirtz as the central creative midfielder in front of presumably McAllister and Gravenberch. Where then does Szoboszlai go? I don't think Szoboszlai, you can really play him too deep. So that has made that a more split midfield, an obvious 2 and a 1 rather than the 3 in which they have slightly different roles. So that would suggest to me that they're looking to control possession a bit more, that they're looking to use possession as a defensive tool. I think you look at the back four, or you look at the defenders in the squad, they maybe still seem a centre-back short with Joe Gomez and Joel Quansah leaving. So that might be something that they just look to shore up. But it's on paper, it looks hugely exciting.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think of a front four of Wirtz playing behind Salah, Isak, if he does come, and Cody Gakpo, I think that's potentially enormously exciting. You do just slightly worry, although we said this last season, you worry about them at the back of midfield. Do they have a sort of Fabinho style spoiler there? No, they don't. They got away with it last season with sort of a midfield 3. Can you get away with that with a midfield 2 plus Wirtz?
Yeah.
And we'll find that out.
Yeah, it's very interesting in Szoboszlai. I hadn't really considered that. Like his forward running, it was such a big part of how they went about their business last year. But I take the point about controlling games and possession. Luis Diaz is gone. In some respect, he's such a huge loss in many ways, and did turn down 2 contract offers. like even the Opta stats since his arrival in 22, he's kind of top of the class, albeit Salah's season last year was ridiculous. But I mean, he won possession in the final third 70 times across Premier League games, which is second best on the team. Number one for dribbles completed, number one fouls won, number two goals, number two goal involvements and touches in the opposition box. 29 Premier League goals across his 3 years, 44 when you add in assists. I guess though they'll sort of absorb it, but I mean, it's a 28-year-old at his peak who's a proven Premier League performer walking out the door. But again, there's so many arriving that no one's that concerned, really, it seems.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was fairly clear last season that Slot preferred Gakpo on the left
Yeah.
and played Diaz through the middle quite a bit. And then I guess you ask yourself a question, who would you rather have at centre forward? Would you rather have Luis Diaz or would you rather have Alexander Isak? And that's not really a question.
Fair.
So, yeah, I don't think he particularly wanted to leave. I'm sure fans were perfectly happy with him. I mean, he obviously came through that awful period when his father had been kidnapped, and I think something like that often sort of builds bonds of affection with the club. Um, but yeah, I think you look at the trade, and Liverpool would probably think, yeah, we're getting the better out of that.
No, it's fair. So Isak pretty much nailed on, is it? Newcastle, why can they not withstand this? And why can't they spend more? Is it just PSR has them sort of screwed here? Why are they not able to spend $500 million every summer?
Well, I think it's a really good question. I mean, PSR stops them slotting $500 million every summer, but they are back in the Champions League. They should have a little bit of headroom because it's not like they've really been on a splurge last couple of years.
No.
So I find that quite interesting. I know that they're talking about the stadium move. I say there hasn't been much concrete on that since the end of last season. But I mean, that wouldn't necessarily come under PSR anyway, because it's infrastructure. So you get that would be discounted. It suggests to me, this is the message we were getting all of last season that the Saudis, the Saudi PFS had to retrench. That if you look at, for instance, Neom, the city in the desert, the size of that has been cut from 100 kilometers to 300 meters, I think, in his initial phase, which is a big cut. They're starting to feel, actually, we don't have all the money in the world. And that's still an extraordinary project. 20% of all the world steel production is going on that. So it's an enormous project, but they are starting to just sort of slightly retrench. I think their investment is becoming increasingly focused, their sporting investment is becoming increasingly focused internally, taking events to Saudi Arabia or the Saudi Pro League. So it may be that because Newcastle, they can't just sort of chuck £500 million at it and make them a regular Champions League side, because that's a battle, because that's a fight every season. There is just this sense that maybe they've become distracted. Maybe Newcastle's not the centre of their plans. And they've also got this big problem, which really they've never quite solved, that the structures by which they sign players don't really seem that effective. That after that first few months, they haven't been particularly good at picking up players. So Dan Ashworth obviously has left. Paul Mitchell came in as sporting director. I think he was fairly frustrated by how long it took things to happen, that it had to go through a series of Saudi committees before you could get anything done. He ended up leaving. I mean, I think his relationship with Eddie Howe wasn't great. I think he was seen as quite an abrasive figure by others at the club. But now you've got this ludicrous situation where Eddie Howe and his nephew are doing most of the transfer dealing. And I know they're trying to bring in new sporting directors. A couple of figures have arrived who work in the background, including Jack Ross, the former Sunderland manager. But it's sort of too little too late to put in place a programme for this summer. So it does just feel like everything's just stalled slightly.
Yeah.
Isak, I think, is why they can't hold on to him. He was told, seemingly by Amanda Staveley, before she left with ill health. And the other problem they've got, of course, is their CEO, Darren Eales, is himself suffering from a rare blood cancer. So he's stepping down in a couple of months.
Right.
So they've been very unfortunate in terms of illnesses to key personnel. But Amanda Staveley seemingly had given Isak some kind of verbal confirmation that he would get an improved contract. He's only on 120 grand a week, which for arguably the best pure centre forward in the Premier League. Maybe Haaland you'd quibble with, but one of the best 2 or 3 pure centre forwards in the Premier League. 120 grand a week is nothing. Yeah, he'd be looking at least double and maybe 2.5, 3 times that. He's on a third of what Marcus Rashford was on. I mean, that makes no sense. So I understand why he thinks he's worth more. And then Paul Mitchell apparently said to him, PSR means we can't give it to you. And so I understand then why Isak wants to leave. But if they end up, I mean, do you want to? He's got 3 years left in his contract, but do you want him hanging around sulking for another year, another 2 years, trying to force a move? We don't know why he didn't go to Singapore in that preseason too, whether that was his decision, whether it was the club's decision. But it was clearly related to his unhappiness. So they could withstand offers, but do you really want to do that, or do you want to take 140, 150 million that you can then reinvest and maybe begin phase 2 of the project?
Yeah, I guess you got to take it. Okay, so that's nominally then Gakpo on the left, Salah on the right, Isak, Florian Wirtz behind, McAllister, Gravenberch, and Szoboszlai and others to come in as you see fit. So that's fairly tasty, to say the least. Liverpool kick off Bournemouth Friday night, second week of August. On plucky old Manchester United over in Chicago, there was a time, kind of late 90s, where start of every season when I'd buy Match magazine, there'd be bunch of Liverpool players in the front and the headline would be "This is our year." And Luke Shaw in Chicago, who really should know better, was asked, what are the ambitions for this season, Luke? And I thought, don't. Just don't do it. And look, he stepped up and he did it.
The aim has to be win the Premier League. I know people will, be questioning me for saying that after last season, but it has to be that. And, it's not just me that thinks that. I'm sure the whole team, if you ask them, they all have the same aims. Even the manager, I'm sure he probably wouldn't say it in the press, but, we all have to have the same beliefs and ambitions. And, like I said, that real family sort of feeling together and all strive for the same thing.
Look, this is our year. They're in it to win it, Jonathan.
Well, good luck. I understand why he says that. I mean, if he come out and said, well, we were hopeless last season, top half.
No, I don't. If it was a 20-year-old, fine. When it's Luke Shaw, you say, listen, major improvement in last year, one game at a time, every game. This was not like a pressing interview. We need an answer, Luke. He could have dodged this. He's experienced enough to dodge it. It's just like, of course you say that. You're going to be leading the apologies in a month. Ashen-faced.
No, that is true. But realistically, when they were as bad as they were last season, if they finish top half, I think that's not a bad season. Qualify for Europe, I guess, is the next step. Even if that's the Conference League, even if they end up the following season doing essentially what Chelsea did, it's potential to win another trophy. But the United have no chance of winning the league for, I would say, minimum 5 years, and even that's quite ambitious. That there's so many steps they've got to leap. I don't understand the transfer policy this summer, or to be honest, at any point in the last decade. But why are they, when they've already brought in Mbeumo and Matheus Cunha, why are they so obsessed by bringing another centre forward? Why are they looking at Ollie Watkins? Surely the priority has to be somebody at the back of midfield, somebody with a bit of legs, a bit of aggression. Maybe they think Ugarte can do that, but he didn't have a great first season. No. And especially if they're going to play Bruno Fernandes deeper, which appears to be what they want to do, you got to have more than Ugarte. Kobbie Mainoo, but he's not really a deep line player. You want him further forward, or certainly that's the way it appeared. I'm not sure that Amorim really trusts him anyway. And also, he's a kid. He's 19. You don't want to put too much burden on him. For all that United fans would like to cast him as the Messiah, you've got to be realistic. And Mason Mount, look, tactically a very smart player, but I don't think he's really the physical profile of player you need at the back of midfield, and you can't rely on him to stay fit anyway. So it seems to me that their priorities are all wrong. And I'm not entirely convinced by those two players they have signed. And the bigger problem is they can't get rid of players. We've got this. I mean, Rashford's gone now, but of the other 5 that they've bombed out the team, the other 4 are still hanging around.
Yeah, it's true. And we won't dwell on it because I suspect it's a theme we'll revisit fairly quickly in the new season. but there are major question marks over Amarim, excuse me, and I ain't changing for anybody. You know, like that was really worrying the way he oversaw that season, and he does not have huge credit in the bank, albeit the match going support for him is huge. You know, wildly popular still at Old Trafford, and they do tend to support the manager, but like the jury is really out on the way he oversaw last season.
I mean, it is and it isn't. I mean, I just think he was the wrong appointment. That doesn't mean he's a bad manager. And once you've committed to him, you might as well keep committing. Once you've gone this far. But I mean, yeah, how often have we talked about this? He plays one way. He plays that 3-4-3 or 3-4-2-1, and you look at that United squad, and the vast majority of them have never played that before, shown no aptitude for it, and they're having to learn on the hoof. Now, that's why it seemed to me they had to get their transfer business done early this summer so that he could have a full preseason with his full squad and get everybody used to each other, get everybody used to what they're doing. But instead, they've got 2 players in and they're still scrabbling about for others. They haven't managed to get rid of the players they want rid of. And you're thinking, what were they doing the second half of last season? Surely they knew that Rashford was going to go. They knew that Tillman Malacia was going to go. They knew that Garnacho was going to go. They knew all these players were leaving. Why were they not doing everything in their power to get them off their books? And yet, seemingly, they're still trying to sort through that now.
Yeah. Their opening weekend, they play Arsenal, who, you know, have kind of done decent business as well, Jonathan. Gyökeres, albeit some, like Rio Ferdinand amongst others, have kind of questioned the extent to which he's going to translate into the Premier League. But, they were crying out for a striker, obviously. He's 27 years old, so he's moved for 65 million. They've picked up Madueke as well for 50 million. He really doesn't strike me as a bad supporting act if he's not necessarily in the first team. And then if they get Esse from Palace, who's kind of a joy to watch and a brilliant, brilliant player, geez, that looks like a very reasonable summer for Arsenal, no?
Yeah, I would say so. Norgard as well at the back, extra cover. So Madueke, I think the price looks a bit high, but you can play either side. He played pretty well for England. He was England's probably their best player in Andorra, which, I mean, okay, it's not saying much. I think there's some feeling that he's a little bit technically looser than you'd like, but as they've desperately needed cover for Saka. I think if Eze comes in as well, that gives him a real threat down the left. Gyökeres, the worry about him that I've heard from a couple of Premier League clubs who were sort of sniffing around him was, does he get his shot off quickly enough? He's been prolific over the last 4 seasons. 2 of those were Coventry in the Championship, 2 of them were Sporting in Portugal. So Arsenal do play against low blocks, packed defences quite a lot. Can he sort of manufacture half chances? Is he quick enough at latching onto chances for that to really translate? I think that's a doubt. I'm not saying he definitely can't do it, but it is the doubt. But they needed a centre forward. He is a centre forward, and his last 4 seasons he has been prolific. So that should help. I don't think he'll play every week. I think Arteta would still like to play Havertz, but yeah, they seem to have answered a lot of the obvious needs they had last season. I think Zubimendi coming in should release Declan Rice a bit to get forward. So he's sort of almost like a younger Jorginho to do that role, that very tactical role at the back of midfield, of filling space and just distributing quite simply, keeping the ball moving. So yeah, I don't think they necessarily. I mean, Eze would be a stellar signing. Yeah. I think the others are slightly quieter names, but they fulfill real needs.
How much pressure do you suspect Arteta is under to deliver a trophy this season, with a view to his job? Like,
yeah, I mean that's a difficult one because they've clearly got better in the almost 6 seasons he's been there, but they haven't won a trophy in 5. They have finished second 3 seasons in a row, and at some point people will start to get frustrated. And there'll be this sort of sense of, oh, he's not a winner.
Yeah.
Which I always think is a little bit unfair when Arsenal clearly don't have the resources of City. But last season would have been enormously frustrating for them. But Liverpool spending nothing, essentially signing Chiesa and nobody else, just sort of wander in And the season when City fall apart, they strolled to the title, and Arsenal really never got that close to them. So I don't think he should be under pressure, but equally, I understand that the frustration is beginning to mount, and you do wonder if players begin, and that's the key. I think it's the players rather than the fans, although I guess the two feed off each other to an extent. But if players start to think, actually, has this guy really got the edge? That's the question. And my doubt about Arsenal has always been they seem to really need to dominate games to win them, and that there's a whole load of games where they've been on top for whatever reason they haven't scored. Something goes against them and it all falls apart. And they seem peculiarly prone to that pattern of game. Now, whether that's just because they haven't had that centre forward to take chances or to manufacture goals from nothing, whether it's some sort of broader psychological weakness, the danger is it becomes sort of self-affirming that the players start to believe that of themselves, and then it becomes very difficult to get rid of.
Yeah. I guess you can overlook as well the injuries last year. Like Odegaard wasn't really himself even after coming back, and Saka missing for such a long time. So, there's a right chance they're much stronger this year. Chelsea are such an interesting case. Up until Christmas last year, a lot of people really felt there was something there, and Maresca seems like a really impressive manager. Club World Cup obviously was, I think in the end winning it is kind of buoys them. To what extent it cost them later in the season is the big question mark. They brought in João Pedro. He was very good at the Club World Cup. They have Liam Delap there as well. I mean, I don't know how much he's going to play, but he's in. They just have a lot of players, an impressive manager who's starting to make sense of the whole thing. They feel a little bit poised. I'm hesitant to overstate it, but they do.
Yeah, I think they do. I think they've bought a lot of players, and there is now a sense that they're starting to coalesce into a team. The way they played against PSG in that final, it was exceptional. I think João Pedro makes a lot of what they're doing make sense. I think he gives a greater structure to that forward line than Nicholas Jackson ever did. I think Jamie Gittins is is he an improvement? Pedro Neto, he's definitely a useful other option on that side.
That was the most Chelsea signing of all time. It's like, never does a club like to shuffle wingers for 50, 60 million more than Chelsea. So I can't keep track. So 20-year-old Dortmund, 65 million and you come and get one out the door. And honestly, there won't be a huge difference between the two of them, almost certainly.
Well, we'll see. I mean, I think their feeling is that Jamie Gittins is, he prefers playing on the left, cutting in rather than, so he's the opposite side. So really, he replaces Mudryk, I think, in the squad because Mudryk's obviously got his drugs case pending. I think there's a feeling Gittins is a better dribbler than Madueke, that his centre of gravity is more over the ball when he dribbles. I think they're still keen to sign Xavi Simons from Leipzig, which would cost a lot. And that would give him a ludicrous forward line, possibly even Garnacho as well thereafter as well. So I'd say they're the fourth of the four challengers, but then having seen how well they played against PSG, it's very hard to write them off. And I think the point you make about we don't quite know what effect the Club World Cup will have in terms of the pattern of their season, I think that must be a concern for them as well.
Yeah. City's business over the summer, I can't claim to be able to assess it overly. They've brought in Tijani Reindeers from Milan for 55 million, central midfielder, left back from Wolves, 35 million, and Rayan Sherry from Lyon, 21 years old, 37 million, highly rated. Yeah, like in 5 years' time, these may well be multiple Premier League winners and household names, or not. I don't fully know, but it didn't scream off the back of last year like major message to the league when you compare to the spending of others. So how are City feeling going into the new season?
Well, I think there's obvious concern because of how last season went, and they have made a lot of changes. Whether they can all settle in, I don't know. I think Guardiola, that interview he did with GQ, talking about how he's ready to take 15 years off. That doesn't sound great.
Okay.
So, I mean, Guardiola's a great coach. Their recruitment has been very good historically, but maybe just started to waver recently. I mean, Nico Gonzalez, it seems, sort of talk that he could be leaving already. One of the players they brought in January. So there's doubts there, but equally after that, I mean, a blip has maybe that slump they had in the middle of last season. They didn't finish the season badly at all. Yeah, they came back to finish third. They weren't that far behind Arsenal in the end. So yeah, there'll be concerns, but I think equally the squad needed a lot of regeneration. They've done quite a lot of regeneration.
Yeah. It was funny last year. Every week, you'd look at the two teams generally and you would think, well, City have to win today. And it just wouldn't happen. It didn't make much sense. And it's hard to know the extent to which Rodri just makes them 15, 20 points better. But I guess it can't hurt. So I don't know. I don't know what to make of City or Guardiola. I'd missed that interview in GQ. Was he suggesting imminently? Like, was he like, I'm wrecked?
No, I think he was talking about 2027 when his contract's up. I think he's starting to look tired as well. So it wouldn't surprise me if he took time out after that.
Not to ask a redundant question at this stage, I think people generally have almost given up. Any sign of these 115 charges? Anything gonna, anything gonna happen this year, or we kick it out for another year or two?
Who knows? I mean, the latest we've been told is it's probably going to be October, but we've heard so many dates before. I'm sort of slightly skeptical, so we'll find out.